Hey guys, it's DeAnna. Today I'm going to talk to you guys about the circulation through the fetal heart. And it's quite a bit different from circulation through the adult heart or just any human that's been born heart that I did in the last video. Because when you think about it, the fetus is living inside of the amniotic sac and it's filled with fluid. So lungs are not functional within the fluid. So the pulmonary circuit that we learned about last time is actually not functional at all before the baby is born. So there are a few structures that are designed for the fetus to be able to get their blood oxygenated, or at least somewhat oxygenated, while they're in utero. I hope you enjoy this video and I hope it helps you out. Feel free to leave any questions in the comments below and let me know if this helped you out. Also, remember to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching. The anatomy is for the most part the same. There are just some physiological differences that occur within the fetal circulation that are pretty important to point out and pretty important to notice. Okay. And again, it's not shaped like this. This is just for your visual representation, okay? So here we have our right atrium, our right ventricle, our left atrium, and our left ventricle. So, normally, remember we learned in the adult heart, or, you know, any functional heart that's from an organism that has been born, is not in utero. We have the pulmonary artery, which will take blood away from the heart into the lungs, right? So, well, they would normally do gas exchange here at what's called the pulmonary capillaries. And then the pulmonary veins take the oxygenated blood back to the left atrium. So that's what we learned in the adult heart. It's different in the fetal heart, okay? So the pulmonary capillaries, this entire side of the circuit is shut down. The baby is living essentially in a sack of water. I mean, it's not water, but it's fluid. And lungs are not functional in fluid, as we all know. So there are a few structures that the fetal heart has that are designed to oxygenate the fetus's blood while still bypassing the pulmonary circuit altogether. And one of those structures is right here. I'll just kind of outline it. It's a little foramen. It's called foramen ovale. And essentially a little hole between the right atrium and the left atrium. And it serves for the blood can actually pass right from the right atrium into the left atrium, therefore bypassing this entire circuit. We have another structure that branches off of the pulmonary artery and feeds directly into the aorta. And this little structure here is called the ductus arteriosus. Okay? So the ductus arteriosus also serves as a second way for the fetus to bypass the pulmonary circuit altogether. Hopefully this is clear. So we have two branches that will come off the aorta, so we can have the blood go straight to the systemic capillaries that we learned about in the adult system. Same thing, systemic capillaries. Just label this aorta. So the systemic capillaries are where the exchange occurs with the body tissues, right? We also have this second little divergence here, and this is called the umbilical artery. The fetus gets oxygen from the mother's blood. So this is done through this system right here. So we have the umbilical artery, and it's going to go through and oxygenate the blood. So these are the placental capillaries. And that is where the gas exchange occurs in the fetus. So oxygenation occurs, and now I'm going to switch to a red because we have oxygenated blood flowing through the pulmonary vein, the umbilical vein. And then the vena cava and the umbilical vein will meet back up. The oxygenated blood and deoxygenated blood will mix, and they'll go back and feed into the right atrium. So the reason for why is it okay that the oxygenated blood and the deoxygenated blood are mixing is because the fetus has a much lower metabolic rate, and so it doesn't need as much oxygen as an adult would. So it's okay to have that blood kind of mixing. So now we'll just go through the flow of everything. So we'll come in from the vena cava, right? Let's start here. We're going into the right atrium. Remember, we can't go to the pulmonary circuit because it's shut down because we're in fluid, right? So we have two options. We can either travel from the right atrium straight to the left atrium via the foramen ovale. And then if we did that, let's just say we went with that path, the blood went to that path, it would go from the left atrium down into the left ventricle, out the aorta, and now two more paths. We can either go to the systemic capillaries and oxygenate the body tissues, or we can go to the umbilical artery, to the placental capillaries, and get oxygenated blood. The blood then leaves the placental capillaries with oxygen in it. It comes back and meets back up with the vena cava, and then feeds back into the right atrium. Second option, and both of these simultaneously will happen. Fluids don't just pick one path to go. They fill the shape of their container, so both things will happen at the same time. So we'll go in from the right atrium. Some of the blood will get to the right ventricle. It'll exit through the pulmonary artery. It'll exit through the pulmonary artery, but instead of going to the pulmonary capillaries, it will travel through the ductus arteriosus and into the aorta. And then from the aorta, the same path as the other one. So two ways to bypass the pulmonary circuit in the fetus are the foramen ovale and the ductus arteriosus. Now what happens when the fetus is born is there's actually a little flap of tissue that covers the foramen ovale, and it just covers up that hole, so that's no longer continuous, and blood can no longer flow from one atria to the next. And the foramen ovale, once you're born, it actually becomes known as the fossa ovalis, because the flap of tissue leaves a little kind of indentation. So I'll show you if I can. So it will actually leave a tiny indentation. It'll kind of just be like, and you can see it. It's very hard to see on a heart, but you can observe it. It becomes the fossa ovalis, just a tiny indentation in between the right atrium and the left atrium. And then the ductus arteriosus snaps shut, and becomes not functional, and eventually will erode away. The second the baby's born, they have to cry and start breathing to inflate their pulmonary circuit and activate it. And then from that point on, their pulmonary circuit works the same way ours does. Yeah. So a few major new terms we learned today. I'll just write them out. We learned foramen ovale, ductus arteriosus, umbilical artery, umbilical vein, and placental capillaries. So these are the fundamental differences between the fetal circulation and the adult circulation. I hope this video helped you guys out. Please feel free to leave your feedback. Let me know if this video helped you out. If you have any questions, always feel free to comment, or you can ask us on our Instagram or via email. Yeah, so thanks for watching. Have a good day.